Hey guys, this is Brett Burns with Prepared Man. I'm coming back with my In the Bush Final 7 entry. Today I've built a pretty interesting trap. This is a treadle snare. Now, this trap is a trap that I've worked on a lot since I was a little bitty kid, because if you ever want to feel like John Rambo out in the forest, you're going to build a treadle trap. Now, right behind me is my treadle trap. It is fairly camouflaged, let's say. I do a couple of different things that are different from some of the books that you've seen. So I will show you what's going on with my trap. Let's take a close-up and we'll look at some of the parts. Then we're going to camouflage it back up just like I do on my trap line, or what I would on my trap line. And then we're going to throw this bad boy and see what it's like. Stick with me. Okay guys. Alright, up next we have our treadle snare. As you can see, I'm under considerable lot of pressure. I've used this little maple sapling, and I got a pretty good spring on this bad boy. Now, this is a spring and a torsion trap. It's not a deadfall. It's not going to use weight to kill an animal. This is going to suspend an animal, hopefully by the neck, but more realistically by the upper torso. You're going to come to a live animal about 30% of the time at least in this trap. Now, if you don't come to a live animal, that's all good. But if you do come to a live animal, you're going to have to be prepared to kill it. And that's something that I'm going to talk to you about as we continue. Now, the treadle snare, all the action takes place down here on the floor. So we're going to kind of move up. I'm going to set the camera up and zoom in. I'm going to talk to you about the individual components. Give me this second here. This is my treadle snare trap. Now, as you can see, I went with a natural cordage again. Let me flip the viewfinder around here. There you go. I went with a natural cordage again because the requirements of the contest say that I can use no store-bought materials. So I actually used the rest of my tulip poplar bark. I've pulled quite a bit. I have a lot left over. You can see some scraps laying around here because I haven't cleaned up my trap yet. But this is going to add it's a tough fibrous cordage. Now you'll see that I have a couple of different fastening points that you'll see when we zoom out and we go up the line and check out what's going on. And that's okay, that's not going to hurt anything, because my snare is all one piece, my attachment points are all one piece, and that's going to provide for stronger natural cordage. Now everything that we're worried about is going to take place in here. This is my snare, this is where my bait's going to go, or if I don't have any bait and I'm using this as just a trap that an animal might step in, which is greatly going to lower my chances. But if this is a leg hold trap, this is where we're hoping the foot goes. Okay, now you can see I've got these two forks that I've driven into the ground, and these are considerably long forks. They're probably 12 inches long, because if they're not 12 inches long, when you put your torsion on, you're going to pull your forks back up out of the ground. Everything's going to go flying everywhere, and you're going to feel like an idiot. So I've driven these long forks into the ground. So the first thing I'm going to do to camouflage these is I am going to rub just a little bit of dirt on them. You know, just a little bit, just to get that brightness out. And then the rest of the action is just a toggle. You can see my trigger toggle. This thing is sturdy until it's triggered. My trigger toggle's right here. Right before I set this trap and arm it, I'm going to turn that a little bit so it's just barely touching. So there's not going to take a lot of weight to set this thing off. My prep point underneath these cross pieces, which we'll put back in just a second, is I've dug some soft earth. The reason I dug soft earth and I softened everything up here instead of actually leaving a hole is animals can see holes, so they're going to step over holes. I don't care if you cover it with a couple of sticks, they're going to see it. So this is just soft, loose dirt, which will allow my trap to actually descend, but it's not going to leave such a hole that they're going to jump over it. Now, if you look at my platform, I've got a couple of these trigger sticks inside. This one I actually planed down, which is that basic knife skill. I planed it down to an angle, and it rests between these two cross members. These two cross members are the whole action of the trap. Those two cross members do all of the actual work within the trap. So those two cross members are actually just held together. This one's based against the cross members, these two Y's, because all of my spring tension and my cordage is pulling up on it. The bottom one is just held in place by friction. this toggle is all that's holding it in place. So once that toggle moves, or once I drop that down, the toggle is going to slip out, and that's going to pull my snare up into the air and constrict it. Now, let's move up a little bit and look at my trap before we reset the platform. Move my viewfinder again. If we look up a little bit and we zoom up, you see I have this piece of cordage. Up, up, up. This is that inner tulip poplar bark. There's my first fasten, which is well away from the snare itself. Then we go all the way up, 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 and now you see my spring pole. My spring pole is a maple sapling that I've actually cut off, and I'm going to talk to you why I cut it off in just a second. But if you look close, this is my binding. Give my zoom a second to catch up with us. This is my binding. I braided a piece of poplar inner bark, and I wrapped it around a couple times, got it really fastened, got a notch here and a knot up here so it's not going to slide off, and I've cut the end of my pole off. The reason I did that is to kind of tune the action of my spring pole. If you look at my spring pole, it is a long one. Now I got a lot of distance here that's going to work very well for me, but if I leave that treetop on, it's going to slow it down considerably. That treetop, all that resistance of those leaves are going to slow it down. So you're going to get more of a whip, a whoosh motion rather than flicking up really fast. And that flick is what we want to catch that snare and to catch an animal off guard. So this is what I'm going to do. First things first, I'm going to reset my platform. As soon as I reset my platform, we're going to back off and I'm going to trigger this trap for you. So stick with me. This gives me an opportunity to talk about something that we don't oftentimes see discussed in trapping manuals until it's too late. We've built this trap, we've got the trigger mechanism, we've got the torsion, it's great. Now, once we actually put our platform in place, which is what I'm doing now, and I'm going to kind of tune a couple of things here, you're going to work on these traps. You're going to tune them over and over again, especially after you see them work and you realize there's a weakness. What I'm doing is planing some flat spots in my trigger stick, in my platform, and the reason being is I just don't want to miss that step. Now my trap is actually right now it's on and it's sort of got the safety on. I've got the toggle turned perpendicular, and that allows me to work on this trap and do whatever I need to do and not worry about setting it off. Now this trap is done. We've got some bramble, we've got things in the way which are going to cause my trap to not attract an animal. Now the first thing I want to do is I'm going to take some leaf litter, and I usually take it from 15 steps away. So I'll go quite a ways away and I'll cover this with my leaf litter. My trap's still on safe, so to speak, and that's what that toggle allows me to do. And I've covered this up. That does a couple of things. If you go ahead and dig the hole underneath it and you see this big black hole, I can cover that with leaf litter and hide it from the animal, so the animal will actually step on the trap. Next, I'm going to flip my noose back around here. Those joints and that natural cordage allow me to do that so well. Flip my noose over. Get my noose straightened out here. There we go. Now my noose over. Pop that bad boy on there. Now we're going to put my bait in. Now my bait's going to be something simple. I'm going to use something natural that's aromatic. This would be berries or something of that nature, but what I'm going to use is an acorn. So when we actually see the trigger trap, we're going to have a pile of acorns here, because this time of year right now, late September, the acorns, especially in these white oaks that are right off camera, these white oaks are alive with squirrel in the evening. So I'm going to put a pile here of small acorns. We have deer-like acorns, raccoons being opportunistic eaters, they will eat them. And we have things like possum, skunk, you can eat a skunk, groundhog, and different small varmint animals as well that are going to eat this type of thing. So I've got my snare in place. I'm going to go grab some bait, and then all that's going to be left is our trigger itself. So stick with me. This is what we got. We got some bait, and if I can get close up on the camera here, I'll show you. I've cracked open a couple of these acorns, and I'm just going to lay those in a nice neat pile right in the middle of my noose. Now that sounds dumb to us. That sounds dumb to human beings. If we went out here, out in the middle of the woods, and you saw a tree bent over, and there's a big bright cheeseburger laying there, you're not touching that sucker. But I'm gonna put these acorns here because these animals are just not smart like we are. Now, last thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna kind of tune. Okay, now we talk about a lot of different traps, and sometimes they're slow acting, and sometimes they're fast acting. You know, when we watched those movies back in the 80s and we had those action stars setting traps, and we watched stuff like Predator, it's all high action and they're swooshing and nets and big trees swinging and logs crashing into stuff like on Star Wars. Not all traps are like that. Sometimes you hear a click and there's a rock thump and that's about it. Not all death is very dynamic, and this is something capable of death and strangulation. Now, as I say that, this trap is this trap is dynamic. It's swooshing. This sapling is going to it's going to expel a lot of energy because it's under torsion as soon as this sets off. Now I've tuned my trap. It's ready to go. It's set right at 1.5 pounds, maybe a pound. There's different ways I can tune that and make that different. I can make my toggle shorter, one thing, so there's less play in my cross pieces. I can also leave a gap in one of my cross pieces. I've heard of people cracking their bottom cross piece, so it's just barely touching because there's really not a lot of weight on it. But what I've done is I've just spaced it and I've kind of twisted my toggle, so instead of being straight up and down, it's kind of turned just a little bit, and that's going to allow it for an easy release. So here comes my animal up. We're going to play the animal here with my right hand, and we're going to get snared. So my animal comes up. We've got acorns. We can eat acorns, or we may pass over top of this. And once we pass over this, we get inside and I step on the treadle. I'm snared. Now, we've got a lot of energy up here. What's going to happen is this sapling's going to pull up and away. It's going to pull it up to about waist high. You can see I'm hooked good. It's going to pull up to about waist high. And once it gets to that point, there's nothing left to do but just hang. Now the great thing about it is the animal actually plays a role in this trap. If it's a light animal, this pole's going to swing straight up, the animal's going to climb up the pole, the noose is going to loosen, and it's going to get out. But the weight of the animal actually causes this sapling to sag and seals its fate, so to speak. Let's reset and we'll set it off from a distance. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now, another great thing about this, if you're confident in your cordage, and I'm confident in this tulip poplar bark, you can reset this trap pretty easily. I mean, you can be kind of rough with it even, because you're not going to break your cordage. If you're using bank line, paracord, oh gosh, if I had paracord in this challenge, we'd show a hog or something hanging off this bad boy. Now, I'll back this up. Remember, this is all natural cordage. This tulip poplar bark is tough stuff. Okay, we're ready to go. I'm going to reset back up the camera a little bit so you can actually see an animal, or a stick in this case, get snared. Stick with me. Okay, kind of got it off center for you. I want you to be able to see the corner of my sapling. We're going to come in and reset it. So here we go. Animal comes in, eats our acorn, steps on our treadle, snared. Now, you can see it right off camera. The animal's hanging here. Even a raccoon, which is a heavy animal, doesn't weigh as much as my arm. It's going to hang right off the distance of his feet. He's not going to be able to get away, especially if this is his head. He's not going to last long anyway. He steps over, it steps up torsion. This noose is tightening. I'm using a multi-stranded noose. It's 3 different strands of bark. I just split it and made my noose. He's gone. It was fast. Still a possibility he's going to live from this, but he's not getting away. And when you come, you can get rid of him. You can kill him quickly, cleanly, and use a big stick. You don't have to use a firearm. That's it, guys. This is the Treadle Trap.